Captain, incoming message.
It was the dawn of the third age of mankind.
Groovy.
Hi-ho. This is me, Kermit the Frog.
Hello there.
This right here, this could be a podcast.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Not a great plan.
Program complete. Enter when ready.
Let's see what's out there. Engage.
Hey there, we're those Sci-Fi guys, and this is that Those Sci-Fi Guys show. Just two working dudes, different lives, different jobs, with a whole lot of love for science fiction and the fun that comes with. We are your hosts. I am P.S. McKay. Norm!
And I'm DT Calfman, and I know who mourns for Norm.
Oh, yeah. Indeed. Indeedly do. Let's hoist one up. I got a video of some of Norm's best one-liners, if you would like, in honor. George. Yeah. Anyway,
yes,
sad news.
I would love that video. Yes.
So, sad news. We found out that Mr. George Wendt, fantastic, beloved actor, especially known for Cheers, but not exclusively with his career.
No, his second most popular role is Bill Swirsky's Superfans from Saturday Night Live, where he made not only numerous appearances as the Bears guy, but he also, they made commercials. They got Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre in these commercials because the Packers and the Bears are ancient rivals. And to be honest with you, one of the things that I'm so heartbroken about is we get the Pope from Chicago. Saturday Night Live ends. I was just waiting for them to do a Pope with these guys.
Pope. Yeah.
Bring him and Mike Myers, because that's about all that's left. And who was it? Maybe was it Robert Smigel or one of them who was actually in there?
Robert Smigel's no more. Yeah.
I mean, and Chris Farley was there, but they've still been doing. There's, when he's been doing the commercials. I just don't remember who the other guy is with him. But they needed a Pope. They needed one.
Well, I can agree.
I think it was Vance who literally met with the Pope and gave him a Chicago Bears jersey that said Pope Leo on the back and Roman numerals on it. I literally saw that on the TV or on a reel.
I wouldn't be surprised. There's a lot of jersey passing going around in politics these days. So, but yeah, it's a shame. And I always liked him. I haven't watched Cheers as an adult in a long time. If I have, but it's a good show, and here's our tribute to Norm, George Wendt.
How does a beer sound, Norm? I don't know, Coach. I usually finish them before they get a word in.
How's life in the fast lane, Normie?
That beats me. I can't find the on-ramp.
Still pouring, Norm?
That's funny. I was about to ask you the same thing.
What would you say to a nice beer, Normie?
Going down?
Hey, Mr. Peterson, there's a cold one waiting for you.
I know. And if she calls, I'm not here.
How you doing, Norm?
Cut the small talk and give me a beer.
What are you up to, Norm?
My ideal weight if I were 11 feet tall.
It's going down, Mr. Peterson.
My cheeks on this bar stool.
What do you say, Norm?
Well, I never met a beer I didn't drink.
What's happening, Norm?
Well, it's a dog-eat-dog world, Sammy, and I'm wearing milk-bone underwear.
That was a fantastic line. I sent it to my family today. Doggy.
You saw that already?
Yeah.
Oh,
no. I'd seen just that original clip. Another one that popped up my feed today was Lilith comes to the bar and she's lecturing Frasier on why they're bringing their whatever 10-month-old son to the bar. What is he going to learn here? And Norm walks in, and the kid's first words are Norm. And Lilith is like, "Oh, his first words were Mom." Everybody at the bar is looking at this kid. Norm's like, "What the hell?"
Yeah.
So many people might ask why those sci-fi guys would lift a beer for this. One, I mean, he was the everybody's favorite barfly, everybody's favorite Boston barfly.
Mm-hmm.
Not only did he appear as Norm on several other shows, he guest starred in Wings as Norm. He guest starred in Frasier as Norm, where they've come back around. He guest starred in Seinfeld as himself, going on a show where there's a discussion about the character Norm, and he's played Norm like guys in commercials, and of course the super fans, which would be almost like if you put Norm in a Chicago bar to a degree. But
yeah,
Norm was so in the cultural zeitgeist in the 80s and 90s that our own beloved Deep Space Nine made a tribute to him. I think any of you who watch Deep Space Nine remember their beloved barfly, Morn.
Morn. I didn't have
Morn. Morn.
I'm sorry. Hold on. Maybe I can get it.
Of Norm.
Fun fact, also my first password for a specific online account. It doesn't work anymore. Yeah.
Well, sorry your Christian Mingle account didn't work out well, bud.
Well, it was J-Date, but that's okay. You know how hard it is to find a readily available picture of Morn on the IMDb page.
Dude, just pull up what I posted on our Facebook page.
Oh, I have to log into Facebook though. That's the problem.
Fair enough.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
That being said, there, in addition to us being New England kids who kind of, grown up, well, Cheers was one of the biggest shows on TV. We were in middle school when it went off the air with one of the top 5 most watched scripted TV shows. And when I was listening to the sports radio,
fifth grade,
the morning show
for me,
for the Boston sports radio I listened to, their morning show, which is a little bit more than just sports and whatnot, but they repeated the news from yesterday, of course, which was when George Wendt passed, and they relayed it, and the host Greg Hill is in his 50s, and he's got this, but most of the people there's Morn. Most of the other people on his show are a good deal younger, in their late 20s, early 30s, right? And so they're like, do you guys really know Cheers? No, I don't really know. My parents watched it, all that stuff, right? So,
man.
Well,
by the way, mid-50s is not much older than we are, so which kills me.
But here's the thing, though. Like, one of the things they were talking about was that the series finale of Cheers was watched by 80 million people. They were asking, how many people do you think watch this, show, like most TV shows? Like, particularly on streaming nowadays, it's like, if you get, 2 million people are watching it. No, 80 million people watch this live.
Yeah, half the country. Or maybe a third. Let's go with a third.
About a third of the country back then, right? Think about that, folks. This was from the time when Cheers went on the air, there was only 3 stations. When it went off the air, there was 4 major networks, right?
Yeah. Cable was making
Major
a very
network.
big inroad at this point, but yeah,
Yeah,
you're right.
but the major networks were CBS, ABC, NBC, the big three, and then Fox was
Fox hadn't
coming.
even been around for 10 years.
Well, Fox hadn't even been around when Cheers started.
Right. Yeah. It went live, I think, in 86. So, yeah.
No. Like 80, it was like 83 or something like that. Early 80s.
Fox Network?
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant Cheers.
Cheers, yeah, 82 was Cheers. 86 was Fox Network. So,
but even the younger kids, people our age and younger who didn't like grow up watching Cheers, they knew the theme song, probably because it was playing in the house, right?
Mm-hmm.
And every now and then you'll hear somebody play it. People who are much younger than us still go by the Bull and Finch pub. They used to go to the Cheers in Faneuil Hall, which is now the Margaritaville in Faneuil Hall.
No way. Really?
Yep.
That whole area is a very important place in my first chapter of my new book that I'm writing.
Excellent. So
I didn't mention Cheers, but yeah.
Well, I guess after he passed yesterday, like the Cheers, that's still there, like the Bull and Finch pub, like had like a corner and a tribute with a beer out there for Norm or something like that. So,
yeah.
But anyway, this was in the cultural zeitgeist. People have played on the song from Cheers, as alternate versions, joke things. The website, How It Should Have Ended, they started doing this superhero cafe where it was basically Superman and Batman coming in like at the end of these superhero How It Should Have Ended and like kind of reviewing it. And then it spun off and there was the Villains Pub or whatever it was, and it was Everybody Hates Your Face.
Yeah, that's good.
And then I don't know, recently some guy on YouTube which became a Facebook reel was Where Everybody Hates Your Face, but it's basically about Boston to that song. And it's hysterical. I sent it to you. You should watch it. First time I laughed. I just sent it to you. But the first time I saw it, I was in tears because it is so accurate.
You want me to play it now?
It's like 2 minutes.
Yeah, we don't have anything to talk about, right?
Hey, I'm game for it. It's funny as shit. Watch it.
Nah, we'll move on. We'll keep going, but
like I said, Morn is the spiritual successor, the homage to Norm, right? Always there on the bar stool. When you came in Quarks, I think he was there in Deep Space. He was there in the pilot episode of Voyager. He was there in the Lower Decks episode.
He was the first one in Quarks when Quark opened the bar right after the Klingon invasion.
In the Way of the Warrior, yeah, which we just did. He was the first one. Like,
the doors are still opening. The doors are still opening, and then we just see Morn come in from screen left. Just beeline right to that stool. So, and we learned that he lost all his hair because he has about 2 kilograms of latinum in his 4th stomach, I think. So any other portrayal of this species that's bald, that it portrays them as bald, they're technically wrong. Looking at you, Discovery. Season 3.
No, you were just going
Couldn't help it. I'm sorry. I couldn't help it. But that grinded my gears.
And that's fine with me, man. I feel you on that one. This just proves that they don't pay attention.
No.
Anyway, but it is kind of neat, right? Facebook pages, Star Trek Facebook pages did post a lot of stuff yesterday as a tribute, because the character of Morn was based on his character from Cheers. So, I mean, it was kind of neat, right? You go into Quarks and it's like where everybody knows your name in space. They might just try to swindle you there.
Yeah. Oh man,
But
tell you, this one hit me a little hard because, I mean, we lost Coach a long time ago when we were kids. So I mean, that didn't affect us. But
Coach died like during the series, and they brought in Woody Harrelson to replace him.
Right, and that worked out well. And it's funny because they kind of went the opposite. They went with this really young, innocent bartender instead of a really old, seasoned, innocent bartender. So, but he's like he's the next major cast member. No, Kirstie Alley passed away. Dang. I forgot.
Alley passed, yes.
Yeah, shoot. We're losing all our heroes and all the things we grew up with. It's a shame.
Well, we've reached that age, unfortunately. We've lost, when we've talked about it on this show, icons like Nichelle Nichols passing, Bob Saget, Norm Macdonald, Louise Fletcher, maybe not icons, but recognizable figures, Oscar winners, and then people we liked, people who were impactful on it. Jimmy Buffett. All right, there's another icon for you. We did an entire episode on Jimmy Buffett.
We did.
Well, he did enough in his musical and literary careers that border on sci-fi and fantasy. So,
this is also true. This is also true. So,
yeah, man, I tell you, it was a little, threw you for a little bit of a loop. But what has been released over the last couple of days too. I guess last weekend was the Final Destination. The last Final Destination movie.
Yeah. Do you want me to bring that up?
And Tony Todd, who had been in this throughout the series,
I didn't know that he
passed last year.
He was that prominent in that
series.
Yeah.
Yeah. The clips were released of, his last, like this impromptu speech that they allowed him to say whatever he wanted on set, in like his last scene. And you can clearly see just how ill he is. Because, when you watch him and anything else, he's just a very big, strong looking man. And
you know what? I can't get a clean clip of it. I apologize. It's heart-wrenching and inspiring though. But yeah,
the cool thing was I saw a good video clip where they were talking with like the producers, and then they were talking with all these young actors who are in this, and they're like, "Oh my God, Tony Todd's a legend." And I'm like, finally, guys like him are getting their due, right? And maybe it's because these kids have become kids. They're probably in their 20s, but they probably had to at least watch the first few movies, right? Or maybe they grew up watching them, whatever. But the fact of the matter is he's getting some well-deserved and long overdue, little shine on him.
Yeah.
I mean, that even though the voice is frail, you can still hear the echo of that power.
Yeah. Huh? It's still him.
Thin. But you know what? I mean, you can tell that maybe they upgraded it, how they like did stuff with Patrick Stewart and James Earl Jones to like kind of strengthen the recordings. But when he was in, the Kevin Smith, Masters of the Universe, the voice didn't sound that weak. Of course, maybe it was recorded further along ago. Don't know how long, but needless to say, it was kind of nice to see him get some flowers. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Most definitely.
we're big fans of a lot of these character actors who, end up pulling long careers, but don't get I think the credit they deserve. Like, I mean, if you stay in the Star Trek fandom, all the Jeffrey Combs memes are fantastic, right? But, there's a guy who with fantastic versatility who's done, all sorts of roles, particularly within Star Trek. But I also really liked him. He played the hero detective, The Question, in the Justice League Unlimited cartoon from 20 years ago. But Justice League Unlimited, which we've reviewed parts of it before, we've talked about it. It's part of that DC animated universe that started with Batman the Animated Series, then Superman the Animated Series, Static Shock, Batman Beyond, and then they threw a lot of that stuff together to be, started with Justice League, which ran for a couple of seasons, and then Justice League Unlimited was they just retooled Justice League and slapped a whole bunch of. They would just start rotating all of these other heroes,
all the characters,
and the voice cast of that was fantastic. All sorts of recognizable voices: John C. McGinley, Nathan Fillion, Gina Torres, Amy Acker, basically half the cast of Firefly. Actually, almost all the cast of Firefly. But then you get Star Trek alums like Michael Dorn and Renee Auberjonois and
didn't Brent Spiner do something, or am I thinking of Gargoyles?
Maybe Gargoyles. Brent Spiner actually went. He and George Takei both jumped franchises and provided one-off voices in the Clone Wars, in Star Wars, both the Clone Wars and Rebels, which is pretty awesome.
I like that. It'd be nice to see something a little more overt, but I understand why they don't do that.
So did Alexander Siddig. They each had they were one-off characters that were centrally focused to the episode. It wasn't like a quick little cameo voice and you're gone. I mean, the character was prominent in the episodes, but it's kind of nice. It's legit. George Takei was the first, I believe, what they would deem a regular on a Star Trek series to do a Star Wars appearance. So,
right,
kind of neat. It opened the doors a little bit.
It did. And I don't mean to shut any doors or anything, but
Sure.
may George Wendt rest in peace. Tony Todd, same. We've paid tribute to you, but thank you for all the laughs and all the memories, guys. You will be remembered, and you have achieved far more than the vast majority of the human population in its entirety. So
that be true.
But
that be true.
So, we waffled back and forth about what we wanted to talk about tonight. And
I do love waffles.
You know what? I'm okay with them. I don't crave them, though. I'm more
of
a protein
crave them
kind of guy.
I'm a big fan of French toast. If I'm going to choose one, that might be the
homemade
top,
French toast. I need homemade French toast.
My.
Yeah. My wife says that she makes great French toast. I've never had a French toast that my wife has made. I need to talk to her about this. Huh.
Yeah, that is
almost 18 years of marriage. Well, anyway.
That's crazy, man.
Okay.
But, it's funny. We talked a bit about, some people who ended up doing voices in superhero shows. And, Mac is very, very excited for this upcoming Superman movie, which clearly James Gunn is already expanding this DC, this DC universe he's putting together, because recently a trailer for the TV show The Peacemaker, John Cena's ridiculous character from The Suicide Squad, of course, done by James Gunn. He, in this trailer, not only do you get a picture of, you get some clips of his brother, Sean Gunn, interviewing Peacemaker for season 2, but in the room is also Hawkgirl and Guy Gardner. So Nathan Fillion is getting more out of that shitty bowl cut that Guy Gardner has. But Mac is very fascinated by this upcoming Superman movie. It looks pretty good. I'm curious about it myself. They're really playing up the expanded world. They're using like electric guitar versions of John Williams' classic theme. But Max said, hey, let's talk about like that Superman movie that nobody likes to talk about.
Yes.
Not because it was terrible, but just because it was kind of there.
It was a phenomenon of the time, I think. I apologize. I had to step away for a moment. I thought there was an emergency at my neighbor's fire truck and police and ambulance in the yard. It's not my neighbor's. It's further down. So, but prayers to them.
Screw those guys.
I know. It sounds like that, but prayers to them as well. I hope they're okay. It doesn't look like there's a big emergency. So, that's just protocol. So, so sorry, I had to step away. But yes. So you brought up Superman Returns.
Yes.
So here's the
your favorite movie of all time, and I gotta say, you know what? That's a bold choice, man, and I respect you for sticking with that.
So funny story: when we bought our first HD TV, we only have one other. That was the first movie I bought with the Blu-ray player to go with it. And so that was the movie I watched for the first time on my HD TV. Superman Returns was interesting because I was living in LA at the time, and my buddy who worked with me had an inside get, so to speak, on the development of the movie and everything. His wife didn't work for the studio or anything like that, but she was in the biz, so he was savvy. He went to a lot of different television stuff and, Q&As and things like that, but when he was telling me that this was going to be a continuation of the original Christopher Reeves Superman, and they were going to ignore Superman 3 and 4, I was immediately put off and confused. I'm like,
Well, 3 and 4 were bad. 3
they weren't
bad.
Good.
4 was terrible. 1 and 2 were good.
Yeah. I was confused and a little like, how do you just erase that? Like, because up to this point, we hadn't experienced that kind of canon cutoff / splice. You know what I mean? And it was only the year before, in 2005, that Batman Begins rebooted the whole Batman franchise. Up until that point, the last movie of Batman was in 1997, Batman and Robin. And there were 4 movies leading up to that, or 3 movies leading up to that. That was a big franchise. And yeah, in between, Warner Brothers was debating, well, maybe we need to have Batman v Superman, because that's the only way to revive both these franchises. And then they're like, you know what? And Bryan Singer comes in, not as great a name now as it was back then. But, he made a name for himself doing the X-Men movie, which was really well done. And then he went to Warner Brothers and he said, well, how about we do this? And so they're like, yeah, we'll do a continuation. We'll be able to use the theme from John Williams. And okay, yeah, we'll do a continuation of the Christopher Reeves thing. And I thought it was going to be awkward.
Awkward.
Did it feel awkward to you?
Well, didn't Christopher Reeves, didn't he die only like a couple of years before this movie came out?
I think he died the year before in 2005. Oh, man.
Yeah.
If only there was some way I could check.
Oh my.
Oh my goodness. Died October 10th, 2004. I was way off.
Still, this movie was probably already in pre-production by then.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And so the whole thing, when they were doing production for this movie, it was to honor Christopher Reeves. I mean, the movie had a dedication to him and everything. I really wanted to like this movie. There were a lot of cool things about this movie that I thought were good, or they could have expanded upon. Superman going back to Krypton and leaving Earth for a few years to be able to, determine if there were any survivors of the explosion. And then he comes back and he's like a fish out of water. And then he comes back for his first day back at the Daily Planet. And the funny part is, here's the funny part. So my same buddy who I worked with played the Green Lantern in Losing Lois Lane, which was a fan film that he starred in. He didn't star, he appeared. I mean, he was a great Green Lantern. But there's a scene in this movie, in this film, that on YouTube, you could see it for free. You could just pull it up, Losing Lois Lane. It's hilarious. There's a scene, though, where Superman is having a beer with Jimmy Olsen. And that's the exact same thing that happens in Superman Returns. Literally 2 years after Losing Lois Lane premiered and came out, and everything. I thought that was funny. So, yeah.
Sure.
But you see glimpses of Superman getting shot in the eyeball with a bullet, and the eyeball doesn't even reverberate. The bullet, pancakes and then falls to the ground.
I know that
Superman
was a big
blink.
that was a big trailer thing, right? The chain gun just blaring into his chest.
Right. And he gets hit
that's
in
so
the eye.
easy to move around too, by the way.
I know you can speak from experience, but he gets hit in the eye.
They're
He doesn't
just
even
generally
blink.
mounted on helicopters, but okay.
And Superman, when he gets hit in the eye, and the bad guy, the crook, doesn't notices it doesn't do anything. He goes, "Oh my!" He doesn't say anything, but the look on his face is like, "Oh, I'm in deep right now." And Superman, all he does is just smiles, not sinisterly, just like, "Yeah, you know what you did."
Didn't he also just try to punch him though?
He might have.
I think in this movie, they try to shoot him. It doesn't work. So clearly,
that's what happened.
Him.
He tried to shoot. He pulled out his handgun, shot him in the eye. That didn't work, and so he tried to punch him because that was gonna work, right?
He's bulletproof, but he can't take a punch.
He can't take a punch.
I tried to kick him in the nuts, and I broke my foot.
Yeah. And I liked the scene where Lois was on the plane and they were going to be doing the shuttle launch from the plane. By the way, which is how I thought.
Idea.
Which I always thought that they should have done it that way by NASA anyway. When I was growing up, because when I heard that you could just put a shuttle on top of a 747, and I'm like, oh, well, that's a great idea on how to launch a shuttle. Well, no, I mean, it doesn't work that way, but that's what they were trying to do, which to show how terrible of an idea.
This would have been a great time for a drop. That's not how the Force works.
Oh, do I even have That's Not How the Force Works?
If you don't, shame.
I know. I don't think I do. Oh,
that
son
to me
of a
is
bitch.
One of the greatest. That's one of the greatest lines in all of movies for me, not just Star Wars.
Not a great
because
plan.
It basically just sums up
That's
everybody's
not how the Force works.
That really is
All
what
right.
sums up how most older school Star Wars fans feels about some of the stupid decisions being done with the franchise.
How about I put that in the beginning, in the intro? Would you like that?
No, I don't want to. That one's one I don't want to.
You don't want it to be overplayed. I got
yes,
you. I understand. I understand. I can agree with you.
You know what I mean?
I do. I'm happily willing to take suggestions, by the way, later. So, everything goes catastrophic when they start to launch the shuttle. The clamps don't declamp, and so the plane gets dragged up in the atmosphere. Superman. So Lois is like, "Oh my gosh, we're gonna die." Everything looks bleak for everyone.
But
and then Superman comes in.
This is like he's not come back yet, right? So this is like the
big
first time
premiere.
anyone sees him.
Yeah, this is his big premiere coming out, and this is the big moment
big
where
return.
Superman saves the day. Yeah, big return. Save, he he is able to disconnect the shuttle. The plane starts falling because it's lost structural integrity because of the velocity. Shuttle's able to take orbit, and Superman goes down to try to catch the plane. At some point, the plane starts spinning. One of the wings breaks off, and one of the best ideas that ever could have been cinematically was to have him just barrel right through that wing. Really well done. Something I like. That's good. And they show physics in this, which is also good. He goes down, he grabs the plane.
It was a warm summer night in ancient Greece. The episode where Sheldon tries to teach Penny physics.
Oh my God, yes.
And he repeats that like physics 3 times.
Yeah.
What is physics?
Did they
it was
name
a warm
the
summer night in
Newton
ancient
cookie
Greece
after him?
Oh.
So, by the way, also, I'm in a theater in Burbank, the main theater in Burbank, and there are children everywhere. This is the middle of Saturday with my roommates, like after I graduated. By the way, this is 20 years ago, and I shudder to think that 20 years ago I was out of college. So this is a bad memory. So in a sense, children are crying and laughing and talking, and I'm trying to enjoy this. The moment
you're watching this in Superman, the movie in the theater.
Yeah, in the theater. And Superman is able to get to the nose of the plane as it's barreling down into, was it Shea Stadium or is it Yankee Field? No, this isn't New York, so it's Gotham Field, whatever. We'll say that.
It's Metropolis. It's always Metropolis.
Yeah, you're right. They mentioned Gotham once in passing, real fast. So the plane comes down. He's able to slow it down, and you see the stresses in the fuselage as he brings it down, and then he gently lowers it. Then he walks onto the plane. He goes, "Is everyone all right?" And then he sees Lois, and he goes, "Hello." That moment where the two were in love and she moved on, but she's like, "Oh my gosh, there's no resolution." You could see it all in their eyes. I like that. That's a good thing. I also like the idea of Superman beginning to move on and starting to save everyone. And what he does is he goes up to suborbital flight and just starts listening to the rest of the world and hearing the cries of the people who need him. That's a really God-esque moment right there. Well done.
Well, Superman, the religious aspect of Superman, the savior, there's a lot of that in the character of Superman. They've had the Superman up in space, wasn't that? And Batman and Superman, Batman v Superman, wasn't he like when he went back up into space? Or no, maybe there was one of them like where he had to go back up and get like supercharged.
Yeah, after he got beat up and he had all the kryptonite pushed into him and everything, and he slowly recovered. But that's at the end. But then he jumps up and he's able to. Maybe that's not at the end. Maybe Lois is able to pull the kryptonite out of him. He's able to jump off the kryptonite island and then launch up into the orbit. Use the power of the sun, which I just love.
This one
love
had that
idea.
too.
Yeah. Which one had that?
This movie had that. The kryptonite island.
Superman Returns.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about Superman Returns.
Yeah, but there's been icon like Jesus, the cross iconography has come up in several other Man movies or movies with Superman in them.
When he lifts the island up into the atmosphere and out of it and pushes it towards the sun, he loses all energy and he falls down, and that's when he has the crucifix look to him as he falls down into the atmosphere.
Yeah, I think though there was a kind of a moment like that. Henry Cavill, I think, did one too.
He was in a church and Jesus was behind him in a mural or a glass, a glass pane picture as he's talking to the priest, asking like, I know who they're looking for, meaning Zod, and I'm not sure how to go about it. And as the priest is responding to him, you see Clark, and then Jesus is behind him, and basically saying, you need to go to this man, even if it's a sacrifice. And he goes, okay. And, that's what Jesus had to do. As the biblical scholar that I am, I think I put it very succinctly. But yeah, I mean, him being able to listen to all of the world's needs and I mean, the idea of it weighing on you and trying to have your own life is a horrifying thought in the real world, but Superman seems to get along just fine otherwise. I think, I don't know, what were some things you liked about this movie? You said you might have seen a certain version of it in a certain area of the world that might have been less than reputable, allegedly.
I think someone gave me a bootleg copy when I was downrange. My first tour in Iraq, because that's when it came out, right? So we got
no shame. No shame,
it is
man.
what it is.
No shame. No
statute of limitation. Anyway,
that's also true. That is also true. 5 years.
But I
I
don't think I actually watched it downrange. I think when I got back, I did put it in one weekend and watched it. I'm like, you know what? I can understand why people were a little down on this, but I kind of like this kid. There's something to this story. It's a different idea of the Superman story, and of course, they picked a relatively unknown to play Superman again.
Can I stop you for a second?
No, never.
What makes it different? You just said it's a different idea of this man.
Well, all the other Superman stories we generally see are, the origin story, him, becoming the savior of Smallville and, truth, justice, and the American way. But then he goes away.
Yeah.
And now he's been gone for 5 years. And the world is kind of moved on from Superman for the most part.
Didn't she write an article like, does the world need Superman?
No, the article was the world doesn't need Superman.
Something in that vein. Yeah, you're right. That's the title
for that. Why the world doesn't need Superman.
Right.
So basically, she was Taylor Swift. Before there was Taylor Swift.
She made her biggest hit with Superman, and then she made her biggest hit without Superman.
She wrote a diss track.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. By the way, who in their right mind would frickin' date Taylor Swift at this point in time? Like, seriously. My daughter loves her.
Clearly.
She's not by the way, Taylor Swift, I'm not dogging on her. She's not a bad person. Just, fellas, be careful. Just, she's a delicate flower. Treat her with respect, please. For the love of God. So different kind of take on Superman, you're saying?
Well, it's like a different angle from what we've generally seen before, right? Almost all, once the IP goes stale, then they reboot everything. This was this is the first reboot.
Time of that. This is that first instance of that. So we'd never seen anything like this before. You're absolutely correct.
So it is, it is kind of interesting. I liked it for that perspective. He's they tried. I think they tried to find somebody who could evoke a look of Christopher Reeve from the late 70s, early
Yeah.
80s,
I
right?
mean, he had a
Brandon-
barrel-chested look.
Yeah, but he also the hair, and he also had that
Complexion.
that kind of, he could pull off the naive, kind of goofy Clark Kent, that same way that Christopher Reeve gave him like this down home charm.
Mm-hmm. I can agree with you. Now, here's where I kind of depart, where I think Zack Snyder did it better. The Clark Kent versus Superman kind of thing. Because in the Christopher Reeves and then in Superman Returns, it was Superman being Clark Kent. But I felt that Zack Snyder was more accurate by doing the Clark Kent being Superman.
Well, we've had this discussion before, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The fake personality is Bruce Wayne, right? He is really Batman. Okay.
I can agree with that completely, because he became Batman the moment his parents were killed.
Yeah.
And that was the identity he instantly took on.
And you see it done, in like Batman the Animated Series, but also in Batman, in the Nolan trilogy, where especially like when he's playing up the playboy that it's just Joe. Like, he'll walk into these restaurants with like 2 women on his arm, but then there's never any women. No one goes back to Wayne Manor on none of that shit, right? But the character of Superman is the alter ego. He's really Clark Kent. That is who Superman is. That's what keeps him from being a dictator, a world conqueror. It's that, middle America,
this kid born in Kansas,
farm boy upbringing. This
had a loss, at least in this universe. Growing up, losing Pa Kent.
In fact, I actually think in several versions, Jonathan Kent doesn't, kind of dies early. Of course, they're also depicted as much older in a lot of earlier versions of Superman's origin stories.
Mm-hmm.
Smallville, even Man of Steel, Kevin Costner, by the time he dies, does look like he could have Henry Cavill as a kid, kind of thing. It was made a little more sense. But if you watch like the Superman the Animated Series and its sequels, the Justice League, Jonathan Kent, Pa Kent are still alive. Well, he's clearly Superman.
Yeah,
for a long time. So there's a lot of pluses and minuses to it. Clearly, Jonathan Kent doesn't have to die early like Uncle Ben does.
Uncle Ben is a necessity, right? But Pa Kent is not. I mean, he gives a little bit of humility to the idea of, Superman having all these powers, or Clark having all these powers, and he couldn't stop a heart attack. At least that's my knowledge from the Reeves movies. I'm sure it's different in every, version somewhere or something. But any other things you liked about this movie, like other aspects?
Well, at the time, I thought Spacey was a good choice to play. Lex Luthor. He can be menacing. He can.
Yeah.
He's a very talented.
Still very talented actor, which is why no one can really trust him.
Exactly. Clearly, of course, he's out of control, and he becomes, I think, even a little more unhinged and menacing than what Gene Hackman was able to do Gene Hackman, I think, played it up a little more camp.
Yes.
There was a lot more menace with Spacey's version.
Well, this is post jail. This is post jail.
Yeah, of course.
Lex Luthor. So he's hard now.
Yeah.
he's had his time. Like he did his time and he had to deal with it. So
yeah, I mean they go back and forth. The fact that Lois is with Perry White's nephew, who, by the way, Richard White, Dick White, really? That's a lame name. And of course, he played by
we could have gone this whole
perennial
podcast without doing that, but that's cool. You did it. It's fine.
But he's
it's out there
and of
now.
course, and
Now's the party.
maybe this is a Bryan Singer. He's played by perennial, side character guy James Marsden, who's always great.
The most screwed over man in Hollywood when it comes to his characters.
Yeah,
always. I'm glad you agree. I think I've discussed this theory with you before. But every character he plays, the woman always finds someone, quote unquote, better. And he did nothing wrong. He did absolutely nothing wrong.
No, because that's another thing, is that he's not a bad dude. Like normally, when somebody comes back and finds their ex with somebody, they're almost always with some douchebag, or it's a loveless relationship because they married for money or survival or something like that. I mean, she doesn't seem like
Lois is she.
I found Lois to be.
Person?
I found this Lois to be less. I don't know. I just didn't love this one as much.
You didn't, huh? Did you feel she was a little bland? Like she didn't have the spark that Margot Kidder had?
Well, Margot Kidder was nothing but spunk and whatnot.
Craziness.
But, yeah, there's some of that. But there was a lot of, Dana Delaney's from Superman the Animated Series was very a strong personality.
Sassy.
Yeah, I mean, even Amy Adams, she was a stronger personality.
She was quick to tell everyone that she won a Pulitzer, though. That was, every scene she had.
That's bad writing.
That is bad writing. No, Amy Adams is a great actress, and yeah,
she is.
She handled the pathos well.
Yeah, and she was able, and of course, as Lois Lane, she was able to survive through Batman v Superman and in the Justice League, so it's okay. She was able to make it through basically what you could try to do for any hero. She made it through 3 movies in that DCEU.
Yeah. Yeah, and in one scene, it wasn't even her. It was technically the Jean. Was it Jean of Mars or whatever?
John Jones, the Martian.
John Jones, yeah, the Martian. That was playing her. So that was in the Snyder cut, but
Snyder.
So
yeah, I don't know. Kate Bosworth.
Thank you for the name. I was going to say.
Well, I've also got it pulled up, but she always struck me as someone they were really trying to launch that just, I don't think ever quite hit the
Win a Date with Tad Hamilton. She was great in that. That was actually an enjoyable movie. Also, a situation
that's a rom-com.
But it was also a love triangle between the man she should have been with versus the man she wanted.
Well, who would you choose between Josh Duhamel and Topher Grace?
I would. Well, you know what? I could protect Topher Grace, but I would want to be protected by Josh Duhamel.
Fair enough.
If I'm being fair.
Don't get me wrong.
I gotta jump off. Hold on one second. Just take charge, okay?
Well, yeah, I feel this Lois, and maybe it's because it's been a while since I've seen this movie. Of course, she's got to protect her kid. and whatnot. And of course, there's all this back and forth for a while. You know, the kid's old enough where like there's questions. Who's the dad? So clearly everybody's trying to make it think, well, is he Superman's kid? And they do the misdirect with he's supposed to be like asthmatic and whatnot. But, you know, they seem, you know, kind of a nice, nice family. Perry White, of course, is played by the great Frank Langella, another great character actor who also had a great run in Star Trek on a 3-episode series, a 3-episode run on Deep Space Nine. But you know, you have all this craziness with, of course, Lex Luthor, Kevin Spacey, who somehow was able to find the Fortress of Solitude, steal Kryptonian crystals, and is trying to, you know, not only get even with Superman once he returns, but also, you know, fund his out of control projects, since he's also a little crazy after, you know, prison and such. You know, he steals kryptonite, of course, right? Because who doesn't, right? You know, it can't be a Superman movie. Almost can't be a Superman movie without some hint of kryptonite, right? But, you know, Superman's trying to get back into the world. You have, you know, Clark Kent trying to reintegrate back into the Daily Planet. He's kind of geeky and nerdy and whatnot, but everybody's like, oh, hey, welcome back. Yeah, it's been a while. And, you know, that's about it. And of course, Lois goes off on one of her, you know, chasing down lead stories because there's a big blackout that was caused by Lex Luthor and all of that. And Luthor, you know, uses the crystals, combines it with kryptonite, and decides, oh, let's go ahead and grow a new island that's going to crash into the U.S. and kill billions. So, you know, there's a lot of questions that come with that, and of course, Superman goes to try to stop this. Especially, and Lois, of course, is kidnapped, and her son. But there's also a lot of questions about the son until somebody is attacking our good friend, Lois Lane. Yeah, but it gets wild, right? You know, it gets wild. Superman, he's backed into a corner, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But you know, they set it up where it's like, you know, there's a lot of hints of whether this kid is actually, you know, Superman's, and then they just kind of like really over the top where the kid throws a grand piano to save his mother's life, right?
Yeah, he did. He did.
Okey-dokey.
Yeah, he knew who it was. He knew whose it was,
Yep.
and you know, one of my favorite parts about that whole thing about them was when James Marsden's character, I don't even remember his name. You have it in front of you, right?
Richard.
Richard flies in. Oh yeah, Richard White. You mentioned that. Richard White comes in and saves Lois and the kid. I don't know if it's from the yacht as it's sinking, but
yeah.
He comes in. He opens the door as it's sinking, and she goes, "How'd you get here?" And he goes, "I flew." Like, goddamn. Like, as if it was nothing for him. Like, because he flew the plane.
Yep. You know, there's also the scene where you know, Lex Luthor is trying to get, you know, Lois Lane to like say Superman's gonna come save him, and he like cuts her off and wrong, like in her face, like super unhinged, and it's like this guy is really not playing with a, you know, full deck, and you know, Superman has to come in and he's trying to break apart this landmass, but says it's infused with kryptonite. He's weak and he's getting his ass kicked by, of all people, Kumar on his way to White Castle. Really?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's fresh off of Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, and he's suddenly this henchman, which, by the way, is just just it's such a weird thing. Like he's not a tough, he's not a thing, but
he was
probably
yeah. He's a henchman. It's hilarious, right? But of course, one of the things that Lex Luthor ends up doing is just always, he always has this gal around, but he always treats her like shit. So she basically kind of turns on him. That always seems what happened. But they throw the weekend
his
Superman
special buddy.
Kitty, right? Parker Posey, right?
Yeah.
But they throw him into the they throw Superman into the ocean, like, oh, okay. But they save him. They remove the kryptonite, and he flies up. He gets some, some sun power. Oh no, I'm sorry. That's not it. He has to lift the island, right? Like you mentioned, throw it into space and get rid of it. But he's then he gives the Jesus thing as he falls back to Earth because the kryptonite whooped his ass. He's got shards of kryptonite that can't penetrate his skin. Because that's always it.
The needle. I always liked the idea of him falling to Earth, and everyone tried to do what they could to help him. And I mean, ultimately, it was up to Superman to be able to heal himself the way he could. But I really liked everyone helping him. Same scene as in the subway scene of Spider-Man 2, when Spidey stops the train and he passes out from exertion, and everyone grabs him and pulls him back, and it's the same.
That's a very Jesus look too. The arms are wide out, the legs are together.
They both gave everything to save these people, and I mean, one's street level, one's a little bit more world level, and everything, and it's just it means something. I felt that I really wanted to like this movie a lot, and I think I was talking to my buddy about it, and the thing about the movie was it was a rehash of Superman 1. We talked about Force Awakens the other day, about how they went the coward's way and redoing a New Hope. This was kind of that, and I think people didn't understand how to express that opinion at this point, 20 years ago, but they felt something was off. I felt something was off with this movie because of that.
It wasn't.
Rehash.
I don't think it is as close to the original Superman as Force Awakens was to this. But yeah, there's a lot of similar points, right?
Yeah.
Instead of preventing Lex Luthor from dropping California into the ocean, he's creating his entire new island.
Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah. So I mean, we have a natural, quote unquote, natural phenomenon, actually induced, that Superman has to fight. And I think what, and my friend was saying, I think the issue was because he walked out of there really wanting to like it too, but he was defending the movie because it was underperforming. It underperformed at the box office, and I walked out really wanting to like it, and I don't hate it. I think this movie has a lot of charm to it.
It was okay.
It was one of those. I think it was a missed opportunity to be able to show Superman really going toe to toe with someone of a similar ilk. And then when they bring in Man of Steel, they went into it completely whole hog in, and just excess, like hundreds of thousands of people were killed in Metropolis. And I don't know how many people could have been killed in Smallville, but they went the exact opposite direction of that situation.
Well,
And
there was a little less hope in Man of Steel, I think.
Yeah. It was a disregard, a general, like, these people are around, but I got to fight him. So
what I will say is, while I also enjoyed Henry Cavill as Superman because I really like Henry Cavill in general, Brandon Routh, he brought kind of a quiet, maybe a little mildly cheesy bit to Superman. That cheese that kind of goes with Superman when you think about it.
An innocent cheese, yeah.
And of course, I thought, yeah, this guy's okay. And then he really didn't do a whole lot major, guest, had like one or two, occasional guest stars on shows and whatnot. It worked, but like he was supposed to be catapulted to the next big thing by this movie, and it didn't really hit. But he eventually found his ground playing another superhero, the Atom, in the Arrowverse. Yeah. And he really took to that role. He was, a genius scientist who was a little socially awkward, but had a big heart. And he started on Arrow. He guest starred on The Flash. And then when they spun off Legends of Tomorrow, he became one of the founding members of the Legends and one of their longest lasting crew members. And I really enjoyed the character when I was watching those shows. I liked his performance. I thought he nailed it. He brought a lot of gravitas, a little bit of silliness too, But in the fantastic Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover, where they brought in a lot of cameos from previous DC projects, Brandon Routh not only got to play Ray Palmer, the Atom, but he also got to make an appearance as Superman from an alternate Earth, from a kind of a slightly darker Earth, the Kingdom Come Superman that had the black behind the S, because I think it was the Joker who like blew up the Daily Planet and killed Lois and a lot of his friends, and he was kind of he wasn't like a vengeful Superman, but he was a kind of a broken man a bit inside.
Bitter.
He was still Superman, but there was not the hope and whatnot that was with him.
Yeah.
And there was actually a great face-off. Like, he got whatever brain snapped, and he actually faced off with Tyler Hoechlin's Superman, who, from Supergirl, who would go and spin off to have Superman and Lois. But it was kind of nice to see him get to be Superman again and to see this version of Superman also regain some hope too. And they allowed him to have a little gray in his hair like that Superman, and I think that was something Brandon Routh also deserved, because you could see when you watch the movie that he really put his heart and soul into it. The writing maybe wasn't quite there. It didn't click. I said, if I was going to give this movie a grade, I would give it like an 80, right?
But it wasn't because of the acting.
No, it was solid enough. It was just not quite there, right? Give it a solid 80. Like I said, I like Brandon Routh. I think he's really good. I've seen him in a bunch of other things, but I really loved him as Ray Palmer in The Atom. And even though he did a good job here and had a wonderful small part as Superman, that's where I think it is. But, Mac, what do you say? Because I think we're coming up on it right now.
Yeah. I really liked this movie. I wanted to love it more. I don't want to give it the same kind of grade as Star Trek Nemesis, because Nemesis had a lot of flaws to it.
Yep.
Superman Returns was, I think, more earnest in its delivery rather than Star Trek Nemesis. I think Nemesis was the first movie that I walked out of going, I really wanted to like that movie more. This I wanted to like more too, but it didn't have the same kind of fatigue as Nemesis.
No, it was just kind of like a false. It was almost like a false start, though.
Yeah. I would give it an 80. I think that's fair. Acting is solid. The writing was the problem. Directing wasn't even that much of an issue. I don't think.
Well, then I think we've hit it, don't you?
Yeah, I think so.
You want to take us out?
Ryan, apparently, but apparently I hit the intro right. Until next time, guys. You guys keep dreaming. We'll keep working. I am P.S. McKay. We are those sci-fi guys. Stay cool with each other. It's out there, everybody, okay?
And I'm DT Cavman. And from the high ground, the sun shines down upon us.
Those Sci-Fi Guys is an independent broadcast by Alpha Sci Productions, produced by DT Cavman and P.S. McKay. Ocean by music by Aiden under Creative Commons license. For more information on upcoming episodes, follow P.S. McKay on X at P.S. McKay or go to thosesci-fi-guys.com for past episode information. You can now find us on Spotify, so head on over there for our latest episodes, but don't worry, you can still find us on Apple. And we're also on Rumble. You can find us on YouTube with live video podcasts and Facebook, so be sure to leave a like and a comment and let us know how we're doing.